A very warm welcome to Dame Billie Miller, Her Life in Focus. I'm Sherwood McCaskey, as always. I'm pleased that you have joined us. This is program number 3. This time along, you will learn of Dame Billie's early introduction into politics, her understanding of people and the circumstances, and how that prepared her and informed her style of representation.
The truth is, those days were wonderful days to us. We did not know the kind of hardship that other people were suffering. But walking with my father when he was campaigning and beginning to understand connections, linkages. Whenever my mother met up with her friends, the first question always was, how many children do you have now? You always got 2 answers. X living and Y dead. That is one of the first things I began to understand. So that when, like I told you, my sister gave me this dress. She lives in Atlanta. She's lived more of her life outside of Barbados than in it. But my first baby sister, Alice, she only survived 5 months. Penicillin was just coming on the market, but it was too late for her. It still gets me. And I remember asking my mother, I have this picture in my head. She's all in black, and these little crinoline things that are so popular now were very popular then. She was wearing this little hat. And I remember looking, she was a tall woman. I remember looking up and I said, Mommy, where's Alice? And she said to me, very simply, God wanted her back. I just accepted that. But this business of walking around at my father's trouser leg and my mother's skirt tail when they were canvassing, I learned a lot of things. And I can remember my mother in particular, they knew that she was a nurse midwife. So if there was a problem in a house, you know, they would want to discuss it with her. That's why she went campaigning with my father most of the time. And I remember, well, she explained to me, because my mother was born in St. Elizabeth Village in St. Joseph. So she was a country girl. And her first cousin, my Aunt Gwen, who was godmother to all of us, she started off as a nurse. She was a little older than Mummy. And in those days, you had to live in the nurse's home. But you sent your uniforms home to where you lived to be laundered and so on, and brought back every Monday morning. They used to wear these long things. And I don't know if you ever watch Call the Midwife. The head tie and in that same way. That was the dress of the time. And she used to dress up before Aunt Gwen's uniform went to the wash. She couldn't wait to be a nurse as well. In those days, Dame Nita Barrow, well, she wasn't Dame then, but Nita Barrow, Popsy Stewart. Popsy was a nickname for this woman, but she was brilliant. She was Dr. Stewart's sister. There were only really 2 black doctors in those days, you know. Cato, and he delivered me. And Dr. Stewart. And then, well, more and more came over time. But those were really hard times, and I learned a lot of things. People ask me, but how do you know these things? Because you want to know things, you ask questions. like the inspector. His proper name is that he would have been the, what was it called then? No, I don't think. Yeah, he was the health inspector, but I don't think he was called health then. It was anyhow. But I keep telling young people, and they look at me in disbelief. He, and it was always a he in that time, all through the 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. He was one of the most important people in Barbados, although he was despised and looked down upon, because he had a ladle in his hand and, and wore a court hat and so on. But when he knocked on your door, you had to open it and let him in. If the policeman came to your door, he had to have a warrant signed by a magistrate before he could get in. But the inspector, oh, no, no, no. And I remembered I always ask questions. He explained why the wall, the yard behind a chattel house would be covered in stones, so that the water could percolate down and children did not have to actually walk in water. Because in those days, people who could least afford would have outdoor toilets. There was no plumbing. It was a wooden structure, and you had to. My godmother had one, and every now and again I would be allowed to sleep over at her. And I used to be so terrified I had to hold his side and hope that I would not fall in. But that's how it was. And you had to be self-sufficient in those days, You had to learn to clean your shoes, wash your socks, and things like that. You had to eat what was put in front of you. It's no picking and choosing. If you didn't like it, tough. We'll have to do without. That showed me a lot of things about how people lived. So that when I canvassed the city of Bridgetown for the first time, I knew exactly where my priorities were going to be. Indoor plumbing was number one. But I shouldn't have said number one, but you understand the context in which I speak. That was a big thing. That was a big thing. Even before houses were getting repaired.
The events of the 1976 by-election that sent her to Parliament to fill that role will be discussed in a later episode. Meanwhile, Dame Billie introduces us to areas in the city of Bridgetown she eventually represented. You will also learn of the family dairy and how her father and his siblings labored thereon. Dame Billie will also introduce us to the Salvation Army. You will learn why she continues to commend that organization for its good work.
I know Baxter's Road very well. The first year of my life, I lived in Baxter's Road. My grandfather was a man, all kinds of things. I cannot to this day understand how they lived on Reed Street next door to the Salvation Army, where the Salvation Army is. And he had a dairy. I would go around then into Mason Hall Street, and I'm looking, because one of my aunts, Aunt May, Dougal's grandmother, I would look to say, but she did not keep a dairy. But all of my other aunts kept dairies. And my grandfather would, in belling crop season, you know, we have cane top, wake them up. 3:30, the boys had to muck out the stables, and the girls had to milk. And I'm told that in there, they had bicycles too. In their night dresses, they could be seen pedaling up Broad Street, delivering milk. But that's how life was. I mean, it's like a big village, you know. Salvation Army is very near and dear to me. Well, that grew out of Methodism, you know. Yes. He who founded it, I don't have it here, I have it in my study. Of all of the gifts, all kinds of things that people have given me, they used to invite me every Christmas to come and launch the Christmas giving. And they decided one year to give me this gift. It's in the shape of a shield. And on the shield, could I go and get it? This is on beautiful mahogany, it looks like to me. But this, they gave it to me just like this. And it says just one word, others. And underneath here, the shield, the Salvation Army, and then, you know, my name. And they explained it to me. William Booth, that was the name of the man who founded the Salvation Army. He never fell out with the Wesley brothers. Never fell out with them. But he told them that he thought he needed to have an army in the world as he knew it then. They came to Barbados in the late 1890s, just as it was going into a new century. And William Booth had to beg. He had nothing. I mean, Salvation Army, you know, heroes' pennies dropping. He couldn't raise enough money to do what he needed to do, which was helping people. And he was trying to write, this was offshore of wherever he was, I think. He was writing out what it is he wanted. And it was a sentence, really, just one sentence, because he had to pay for it. When you were selling, in those days, yes, when you were sending, well, even now, you send in written messages by cable and wireless and so on. It was new in those days, that technology. Don't forget, you know, electricity only came to Barbados in 1911, but so he is trying to write this thing, but it is so many, and a shilling was a lot of money then, you know, and this thing was costing more money than he had in his pocket. So he asked, how many words can I get for this money? And the person told him, well, only one at the rate you're going. He was trying to write, the sentence he was trying to write was, want to help others. He didn't choose want, he didn't choose help, he chose others. And people knew exactly, I mean, it worked like magic. Others, everything is about others, it's not about us, it's about others. And in a sense, I was as close to the Salvation Army growing up as I was to James Street Methodist Church. It was a very close link. Like I remember when they had to get a new organ, they gave the old organ to the Salvation Army. But as a child, as I told you, we had this lady from St. Philip who lived in, we called her Nana. She was like a member of the family. And she had her own room and everything. But every Sunday evening, she was a Salvationist, because that's how my father found her. He grew up next door to the Salvation Army. My grandmother begged my grandfather, please, could we be next door? Because the babies are coming now, and she could hear and sing just by listening through the window. But all of her boy children had to play some instrument. Used to do, I think they still do sometimes, what they call open air meetings. If I came home from Sunday school, you would get a glass of juice and what is left of the sweet bread. And because I was the eldest, I asked if I could go to church with Nana. Oh, my father had no problem with that. You're going to Salvation Army. And they would set up on the pavement outside, across from King Street. Just a piece of old carpet, whatever. And they would have the, whatever it was, sometimes it was a big tin, sometimes it was more like a pot than a tin, where people would stop and drop in the pennies. That was the part I loved. So I'd be there, you know, Nana's got on her hat with the shield on it and so on. And the best part was when you were given your collection, you would go and throw it on the thing. And they played the same, you sang the same song all, whenever you had to do that. Hear those pennies dropping, listen how they fall, everyone for Jesus, he shall have them all. That's my brothers, you know, they will be singing it fast. Dropping, 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 hear those pennies fall, everyone for Jesus, he shall have them all. I cannot believe that. Years later, I'm a grown woman, and there is an English woman living here. She's married to an English woman too, but they lived here for years. I cannot remember their surname. She was into the arts and stuff like that, a nice woman. And she and I were at some church function. And up it comes. And she and I are singing it. You know, we're older women now, we're grown-up women, you know, and we are singing at the tops of our voices. So she came up to me afterwards. She said, I'm amazed that you know that. I said, you're amazed? Well, I'm shocked that you would know it. And then we told each other the stories. But then they would fold up, and you walk up now the rest of Baxter's Road, turn into Reed Street now, and you're going now to the service. It is still light, not dark yet. And I remember Nana saying to me all the time, she's walking and I'm holding her hand. And she's saying, now, Miss Billie, listen to your Nana. When you go into church, don't rush up to the front. Sit down near the back. Then if you behave good, one day somebody will come and invite you to come higher up in the church. Do you know, to this day, if I go into a church, instinctively I'm going to the back rows? To this day. But I remember the day, and it was harvest too, when Nana then said, you are being invited up to the front. Oh, you think, go heaven, that. But the Salvation Army is beautiful. It's one of my charities. And I always take it myself. You know, they do tremendous work. But I spent the first year of my life upstairs, what used to be the Cermat laundry, or it may still be a laundry there, I think. My grandfather gave to each of his children, either when they reached 21 or got married, a property, a house or land if that was your preference. And he gave my father that property. We live, I'm a little baby now, living upstairs with my parents, and he has his workshop downstairs. He went to the Salvation Army when he was looking for somebody to look after me, because my mother used to help him with the workshop. And he found, they introduced him to Nana. Said, this is a country girl from St. Philip. She's come into town now, and we can vouch for her. And she just moved in, and you know, we were like her children. She had a daughter of her own who also was in this, later on in the Salvation Army. But she was moving around. She was in Belize, and she went to, I think, ended up in Bermuda. But those things were very important in forming who we were as children. Parts of it I can still hear in my ear. When I went abroad to study, I was in a hall of residence. I was in Newcastle. It was really a college of King's College, Durham University, but was transmogrifying into a university in its own right, now in Newcastle. And like once a quarter, she would write me a letter. And I had to invite all the girls living on my wing in the hall of residence to listen to me reading this letter. I dress up in the corner in the old-fashioned way. I still do it. Dear Miss Billie, may the reaches of this letter find you in the peaches of good health. And all the girls will go, ah, loved it, wonderful. And then there would be like 2 little paragraphs about what may be happening and so on. And then it would always end up, your loving Nana. I think I still may have one. Made all the difference. But the Salvation Army was all part and parcel of that. And it was important to me as a Methodist that one came out of the other. And they did a good job.
That journey continued. Dame Billie went off to the UK to study law. On completion of that degree, she returned to Barbados and her legal career began.
In early 1976, a number of things that happened at the beginning of the 70s. I came back here in 1969, December, on the longest ship in the world, the France, because I had my trunk with all my books and, you know, my big gown and all that kind of stuff. And I was going to get home on the 13th. There were, you know, a lot of superstitious people in the world. The ship can sink, the ship can sink, don't go on that one. Anyhow, I got home. We didn't have a deep water harbour yet. Wait a minute. Yes, we did have the deep water harbour.
69, 61.
Yes, but the France was the longest ship in the world, and it could not be accommodated in the new location. And so it was coming in at the old baggage warehouse. It didn't come in, it stood out in Carlisle Bay, and you went out on a little launch. My father and my brother Luther are the first two on deck. As soon as my father looked at me, he said, "Oh my God, my child has malnutrition." I had put on some weight, and I'm killing myself to get it off now, you know. And that's how my father greets me. But it was like the 13th of December. And he said, "You're not going to like how the house looks, but just make it right." So I had to get carpenter, mason, paint, this, that, everything. Trees went up. And the little children, who would have missed me terribly, because he only brought me home twice when I was offshore. And they were just, the Christmas tree blew them all away. And, you know, all of my brother's friends and so, you know, these are teenage men now, you know, and they came and helped and so on. And I knew I was back home. So it was all beautiful again, everything repainted, you know, floors redone and so on. And Daddy was very pleased with that. And then I went straight into my law practice. Bernard St. John agreed to take me into his chambers as a junior. He and Daddy were very close because Daddy's the one who eased him into the Labour Party and so on. And I went into excellent chambers. The head of chambers was the late, great Jack Deere. John Stanley Bruce. He was, I mean, Gabby did a number with him, but he was one of the most generous men I've ever met, ever. He helped all of the young people, the lady who used to clean, the fellow who used to run to oh, I forget what it's called now, but you know, the registry with documents to be filed and so on and so forth. And he treated everybody the same. Very generous man, very generous man. He helped to found the Family Planning Association. He was one of those. And I remember when he told me, "It's time for you to come and join the Board of Family Planning." Next thing I know, I'm all over the world with this thing. Then I went into the cabinet. I must say, all of the prime ministers with whom I worked accommodated me if I had to travel on International Planned Parenthood Federation business. To this day, I don't understand how I get to the top of these things in Nut and Flat. And then, you know, it's a lot of work.
And Dame Billie Miller proved that the work was not insurmountable. That and more will be discussed in a later episode. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. This has been Dame Billie Miller, her life in focus.